DiverSync is a weekly netcast where we talk about the world of scuba diving, fantastic diving opportunities, and some of the happenings in the underwater world. We also provide tips and discussions about scuba diving and get excited about upcoming dives and adventures. Learn how you can join us on our dives and become part of the program by following DiverSync on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, or by visiting our website at www.diversync.com.
Hello and welcome to DiverSync, the next cast and podcast for scuba divers. My name's Rich Synowiec, and you are listening to episode 515, which was slated to be produced July 29th, 2023, and we're running a little bit behind. So it'll be probably, it's going to be probably up sometime in August, but at least this is how it was supposed to be. It's all about Milwaukee and Munising. So in Milwaukee, we went into on a trip in June. It was a kind of a tech light trip. And then in July, the middle of the first week of July, we were supposed to do a bunch of other stuff in July, but we just did Munising, which is an anniversary trip. We do that every year, about the first or second weekend of July, depending on where the 4th falls in. So Milwaukee was the end of June, and we got to do a few dives aboard what is the name of Yitka's boat? Can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was out of Milwaukee. And we did 2 wrecks. The weather was kind of iffy. We were supposed to do 2 and then a long one, but it didn't quite work out that way. We ended up being on a long one on the Milwaukee Car Ferry, which is one of our favorite wrecks up there. It is a railroad car ferry that sank by accident, so all the cars are still on there. All the machinery and equipment has been stripped over the years, but it is still pretty awesome. You can go find really, really cool things. So that was kind of the first really, the real dive that we did. It was a nice day the first day. It was beautiful. The second day was a little bit rough, but I have pictures to share with you from I don't have any video for this podcast because that's what the production delay is. It's just taking way too long for me to do this, and I'm trying to keep these at least 12 per year, if not once per month. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Something's going on with my computer, but we're going to fix that right now. And there, now we got it. It's beeping in my head. So anyway, so let's go ahead and show you some of those really cool pictures. The first one is the Milwaukee stills, and my model is my wife Jill. I tell you, it is the coolest thing in the world having a family that dives. And I apologize if you don't, but if you are still spouse hunting, fix some stuff. If you're still spouse hunting or you're still looking, I'm going to tell you it's a great feature in a spouse is to have them really interested in diving, like you're really interested in diving. So let's go ahead and we'll throw these up there and kind of go through them. And then I got a couple of other things to kind of chat about because it was really an interesting group that we had. It was a group of people from all over, and there was a guy on there from the middle of South Dakota. And I'd never dived with anybody from South Dakota, but he was really cool. And then there was a couple other people that weren't normal people from me. And I got to meet some really neat people. So it was a really good time. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and share this screen. And maybe. And yep, that one's right there. And you should be hopefully seeing. Let's go ahead and make this bigger. There you go. So this is the Milwaukee Car Ferry. Now, the Milwaukee Car Ferry sits in 130 feet of water. The bottom right there is about 132. This is the pilot house. And so you drop down. Our anchorage was in the stern. I have no order to these pictures, but our anchorage was in the stern. And the pilot house sits off away from the ship. It's a little bit far away. As you can see, it's been stripped of all the really cool stuff, but it's still very picturesque, and it has really cool windows, and you can get in, penetrate it pretty easily, and enjoy the aspects of what used to be there. The back cabin is missing its roof, so my wife was messing with her stage bottle there, which is why her camera's dangling. But it's all a conversation of whether or not you can kind of take and picture around the zebra mussels what it would used to be. And there's some beautiful woodwork to this pilot house, and you can see where the beauty of the whole old ship was. There was a nice little burbot. The wreck was teeming with burbot. And on a side note, I had a friend of mine tell me that burbot was the best fish he'd ever eaten, and it was the lobster of the sea, and I'm not buying it. It was awful. I may have prepared it wrong because I did it myself, but if anybody wants to disagree with me in the comments on YouTube or Facebook or on Spotify. So if you guys are getting into this from wherever you're getting into this, do me the favor of liking me and doing the subscribe button and doing all the things on YouTube to make sure that YouTube knows you're following me. Share this with a friend. If you like the pictures, share them, and share them with the byline from DiverSync and get people to come join our community here. And again, I want to give a shout out to the people who are supporting me on Patreon. They get some extra little added bonus stuff from time to time, and they're probably the customers that I'm most speaking to right now. So if you want to be on that, there's some different levels that get you different access to me. So the joy of all this stuff when you're diving at mini tech is we were pretty much practicing a Tech 60. We wanted to go do something that was a little bit deeper, and we kind of leave it up to the group. And so we had been planning on doing something in the 140 to 150 foot range. The weather wasn't going to be real cooperative way out in the lake, so we stayed a little bit closer in on this, but we were diving all that same gear. Now, one of the questions people have asked me in the past when they see a picture of my wife wearing a tank that says flat, or a picture of me that says a tank that says flat. There's a guy named Will Flat that I used to dive with in the river years and years and years ago, and he was a cave diver. He was a tech diver. He was part of my initial core group when I got into tech diving, and unfortunately cancer claimed him about 10 years ago. And this is just one piece of equipment that I continue taking on dives with me to kind of remember him. I have a bunch of stuff like that, just little memorable things, but that one sticks out obviously because we didn't want to brush off his name. He painted that himself. The back on the car ferry, we're on the bulk of it. There's a deckage and like the pilot house obviously was blown off, but some of the deckage and some of the stuff that was protecting the cars had been blown off. Over the years in the 1960s when this was originally found, there were people that tried to cut a hole and get in the engine room and get some things out. There is some things missing, but man, I tried to get into that little hole in the engine room. There is no way a guy my size is going to get into. So they must have been some tiny divers back in the day. But you can swim through, and there's some really neat picturesque moments that you can do when you swim through this and go diving with. We do have open circuit divers, not on this trip. We do have open circuit divers that do it. First time I was ever on this wreck, we were on a boat called the Lender. And the Lender is an old tugboat. It's been doing charters out here since the 60s, and it's kind of the rite of passage for everybody coming out of Milwaukee. But when on that boat, we had 16 people, and 12 of them were rebreather divers, and the rest of them were open circuit. But they were still enjoying this wreck because it was in a good depth. This thing has two humongous props on it, and they're really easy to access. The zebra mussels have covered them up, but it's still very picturesque to see what they look like. And again, my wife is modeling. If you're ever modeling for somebody, light up the subject like she does. She does a great job of it. I don't have buddies that do that a lot. Most of my buddies are also photographers, so I kind of can follow what they're looking at and use them. And hopefully later this summer we have some more of that from diving that we are. But the props are just massive and just super fun and a great rudder on it, and it's just really neat. The back of the the train ferry, which is what this is, a car ferry, was opened up in a clamshell sort of way, and the clamshells failed and is the reason why it sunk and it went down. But they're above us by about 30 feet. Back up on the wreck, we hopped over the back and we're kind of working our way forward through the wreckage of the train cars, and we see other buddy teams that are on here. We had 6 divers on it altogether, and they all got to see stuff, and they had just had a blast. And like, I don't know if you can make it out in this, but there's a rail car truck sitting right there in the middle of the wheels. and that's kind of a little bit, and then that's the end of a boxcar that's kind of on the track still, sitting underneath some of the wreckage. Swimming over the wreck, the visibility was okay. It wasn't great, but it was good enough to get some good pictures and to get find some really neat little friends to see. An old downline. We're back towards the bow, and again another piece of machinery from the deck. It's all twisted up in the bow. I don't know how the lakes get iced over, and the storms tend to tear at these wrecks pretty darn good, so they tend to be torn up. But that's like the windlass in under the deck. You could get in and around the windlass. I sent my wife in there to get a good picture, because that's all it's about, right? Pictures and things for you guys to be able to share it with you. And this had a neat thing going on, and I swear from this picture it's not North Carolina, but there were schools of alewives. I do believe they're alewives. I'm not a fish expert, but I do think I know my Great Lakes fish at least a little bit. But these were schooling, and it was so neat to see shimmering and swim through the schools. The videos that I took were really good, and it came out pretty decent in here. And they were just sparkly, and those are 2 strobes that you see firing. I guess we were moored on the bow. There was another mooring on the stern. More machinery and deckage, and then we're into the other wreck now, huh? Is this on? Yep, we're on the Willie, so we'll come back to that. I thought we had this under on 2 different folders, but we'll go ahead and stop that. So before I get off the topic of Milwaukee, I'm going to tell you Milwaukee's super fun with the restaurants. It makes it for a good social life. We had sushi one night, and we went to burger nights the other night, and it's a neat place to go and do shipwrecks, because there's shipwrecks of all levels there. The weather tends to be pretty good. We go in June, where the weather tends to be decent, and end of June we anniversary that trip every year. The Molly V, I knew it would come to me. The Molly V is the name of the charter boat that Yitka runs, and Captain Yitka is pretty much a legend on the lakes now. I've been diving with her now about 6 or 7 years. If you've been following this podcast, you know when I went to her first. But the Milwaukee Car Ferry was one of the ones that we went to almost every time we dive, because there's so much to do on it. Now, at the end of that one, you saw the strobes, and I kind of want to throw this out there because it's something that's come up a lot on dives when people go, wow, what was that strobe? That was a big blue light strobe. It is a 12,000 or 1,200 lumen strobe. It's the same as their little flashlight, but it's got a blinker on the end. And the big blue lights tend to be, through Divers Incorporated is where we sell them. I'm not being sponsored by them or anything, but they are my go-to light for everything now. They're super bright, they're super compatible, and they're really durable. And if within the first warranty period, they do take really good care of us. So that's the question some people have asked me on this summer's charters. Whenever we're doing a night dive or something, I throw one of those on there. They're like, "What the heck is that light?" It's pretty amazing. So I actually learned on it on the B-29 bomber. So you guys probably have heard about this. I like to repeat myself a lot. So the second day of this charter was really rough, and we got to the dock, and the first day that we were there were fishing boats everywhere. We couldn't find a place to park. There are fishing boats like literally everywhere. Every trailer lot had a fishing boat in it, and the entire parking lot had a fishing boat in it. We had to park off-site and walk back to the dock after dropping off of all of our gear. The next day, we get out there, and there's not a single fishing boat there. There's not a single trailer. There's not a single car. There was one guy that walked out onto the pier. We watched him walk out on the pier while the 4 of us were standing there waiting in the wind. It was blowing like crazy. We were waiting in the wind for the captain to show up to tell us we were blown out. We were sure we were blown out. And fisherman walks out on the pier, turns around, comes walking back. He says, "Nope, it's too rough." And so all the fishermen walk up. Well, the boat pulls up, and Captain Yitka gets out and just says, "Fishermen are wusses. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. The boat will be fine. You'll be fine." And it was a really rough second day. I'm not going to say that it was not borderline. It was okay. Nobody got hurt. We had really good divers. I skipped the second dive because it was just too much work to climb the swim ladder in those waves. It's just a lot of work with all that gear, and I was tired out. So it was a little rough, and I did the first dive, which was a dive called the Prince Wilhelm. They call it the Willie. And the Prince Wilhelm was a purpose-sunk vessel. It was, I don't know the reason that it was sunk out there other than I don't think it was sunk for divers. I recently had been told that some of those ships were sunk in the harbor and then they picked them up, but other people have told me no. But I don't remember where I heard that story. But the rough second day, I did take some 360 video of it so you could see it, but I didn't edit it all yet. It's a little bit too much going on, and I'm going to be trying to change this format of this podcast just a touch. I think I want to do it in 3 parts, and I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up doing 1 full part for the Spotify people because the feedback I'm getting is a lot of you guys still listen to this as a podcast. You don't bother with the video part of it, like the stories and like me telling. I don't know how boring the pictures of the stories are, but I'm going to be trying to do that, and I'm also thinking that maybe I will do it as a podcast and then add the video as a voiceover. It'll take a little bit longer, maybe the stills as a voiceover, but it'll take a little bit longer to kind of sort through it. But I think it'll be a better result on the video side, and it'll also be a better result on the podcast side. If you have comments, go on to Facebook or YouTube and comment. Let me know. These are all going to be there. Don't do all the things, and make sure that you follow us wherever we are. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok, sort of. I'm on Instagram, which is where we get most of the shorts, and then I'm on YouTube, and YouTube is where we usually post this first. So let's get on with the second day. So we loaded our stuff. Wind and waves be damned. We're gonna go, and it was rough going out. It was rough once we left the harbor, and it was rough coming back in. But it was rough while we were out there. But it was still better than not diving. So I'm gonna share the screen. I don't know what happened with the Prince Wilhelm. Oh, here it is. I see what happened. Okay, I don't know why I did it this way, but we'll look at that in just a second. Okay, so here's the Prince Wilhelm. Okay, let's go ahead and share this screen and share it. So the Prince Wilhelm, this is the stern of the Prince Wilhelm, and the Prince Wilhelm lays on its side in about 80 feet of water. But it's in a little hole, so it's been rocked back and forth enough with the erosion around it. It's kind of sitting down in a channel. You can sort of see that at the end of this dive, or end of this picture. And inside they put a bunch of heavy water barrels to make it heavy to sink. There's some cargo in there, but it's all purpose sunk, but it's all set up to swim through, and it's all set up with a lot of really cool stuff still on the deck. The caulking between the teaking you can still see, but that you can see where the clay bottom has eroded away from the diver that's in that picture. I don't see who that is. I don't think that's Jill. It might be, but yep, that's Jill. And you can see how the clay bottom, it makes if you're turning wrong and you watch your fins go, you can hit that clay, but there was a real big current on this one, so it kind of just swept it away. Lots and lots of machinery. The pilot house is still up. The machinery, the main cabin is still up, and the engine room's still intact. I have not gotten into the engine room. It's a little tight for the rebreather, but the engine room entrance is in the upper left-hand corner of that, and those frames are exactly my forearm wide. So it's a little bit difficult to get in there, but that's a different diver on the wreck. The mast is still up, laying, and it's still tilting to its starboard side at about a 45-degree angle, which you can see in this picture, which is pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome angle. Makes it a little bit difficult to navigate, but not impossible. Deck machinery, everything's on it. You can do the entire dive in one dive easily on a rebreather. Most people can do it on a single tank all the way through. I don't necessarily wouldn't swim inside like this on a single tank, but it's still pretty darn awesome. So we're gonna stop share that one, and we'll move back to this. I'm just gonna look real quick while I've got it here and see if there was. Oh, that's why. Okay, so that's the Prince Wilhelm. I thought I had a different folder, but it's a Munising folder. So First charter of the year, sort of a success. We got out both days. Everybody dove. On the second dive that I skipped and Jill skipped, we had 3 people skip it because of one guy flooded his suit on the first dive, but did it in the second. And Jill and I were like, we don't need to go do the tugboat. And they went and did the tugboat. 2 guys went and did down and did the tugboat, the Gillen tugboat out of the harbor there. And that was the final thing. So that was June. Good start to the year. Looked like it was going to be a great year. We had 4 charters planned for July. We had Munising, Isle Royal, which I will do a whole nother section on. We did finish Isle Royal, but we had a Synowiec and a Harbor Beach. Now the Harbor Beach one I was really excited about. The Synowiec one I was really excited about, but for you guys that are out there with boat captains and thinking maybe you want to be a boat captain, I'm going to tell you the Coast Guard can be a pain in the ass sometimes. And it turns out that I don't put blame on anybody, but I really would count on a charter boat that has taken deposits and made sure that that they've got people going out that they would get in the water, and they hadn't been in the water yet. So we ended up having to scrap 2 charters that were absolute perfect weather both days, because the boat wasn't ready. And there's not a lot of charter boats out on the Great Lakes that aren't the really good ones tend to be booked solid. And so like most of them are 6-packs. And the one that we had for the Straits we've used them for years. We've used them for the Straits. We've used them for Alpena. We've used them for years, and they're great people. But for whatever reason, this year they didn't quite come up to speed. And so I didn't get any Lake Huron diving done in July at all. I did get some Lake Superior diving, though, and Lake Superior is one of my favorite places to dive because where we go, at least Munising is one of my favorite places to dive because where we go, we never get weathered out. We might have 1 or 2 wrecks, depending on the year, that we can't do because of Lake Superior's wrath, but for the most part, if you were going to come from a long place away and want to do a Great Lakes dive and you want to experience everything the Great Lakes has except zebra mussels, Munising's what it's got. It's shallower wrecks. They start in, there's one that's in 30 feet of water, and the deepest one's about 90 feet of water. There are some that are spread out all over the place, some that are intact, but they all have a charm that shows you what the Great Lakes is all about, and there's no zebra mussels. So it's more like the Great Lakes, what it was all about years and years ago before the zebra mussels got to this place. But when I go to Munising, it's also near the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. So if you're an old fan of this podcast, you've heard me talk about this because we go there two times a year. It's our ice diving trip that we go in February, and then we go again in July. I think next year is July, the second weekend of July, 18th or 19th, something like that. 14th to 15th, I don't know. But this year we had a sold-out boat, and we got up there. And the place that we stay is a friend's house, and he is a charter boat captain for Kayak Tours now. He used to be charter boat captain for the dive boats that we use, but he had got a better offer, and he's now charter boat captain he goes out to Grand Island, unloads 12 or 15, 16 kayaks with people. They go on a little tour, they load them back up, and off they go. Well, every once in a while, they jam an anchor in the rocks. They're supposed to be in sand. They jam the anchor in the rocks, and they have to leave the anchor. Well, he said, we have 200 feet of stainless steel chain, or 200 feet of galvanized chain and a stainless steel anchor that's wedged in the rocks. You want to go get it? I was like, okay, sounds like fun. Well, one of the divers with me buddied up with me, and we went out and we dove off of a kayak boat. And I've got 4 pictures of that kayak boat I want to share with you. Because I think that is just really cool. So, what happened here? Let's go F11 and again. Oh, something didn't go right. All right, let's try this again. Open with. Technology can get away from me. There it is. So, let's go ahead and share the screen. And we are sharing. Okay, so pretty sure I'm sharing. All right, so stop share. Let's make sure we're sharing. Share screen. Screen 1. Yep. Okay. So this is the boat at the dock. You can see the pilot house of the one behind it, but they have 3 or 4 of these boats, and there's this ramp that's right there at the end, and the kayaks slide off that ramp, and that's how we got on the boat, is back up that ramp, which was more interesting than I thought it would be. But you came out like a sea lion. You had to come up and slide up through those. The two, the grating is like a dock, and the two side channels there flooded with water, and it lays down in the water. It's got a hydraulic ramp that lays down in the water there, and it's really kind of cool. I don't know that I have any pictures of it, but that's the boat we used to dive off of. That's one of the glass bottom boats called the don't remember which that one. The Miss Munising, I think that one is. But Munising Lighthouse Harbor has a fantastic old lighthouse, and this lighthouse is one of the historic monuments on Grand Island. And as we were going out to where we were diving, this is what we saw, and it's in the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. Kayak people out there, that's the size anchor that we had to go get. So that was really kind of a fun thing. So stop share, and the fun part about this was that the dive, we giant stride off. They went, and it was a live boat. They put us right next to the buoy that they had put with the chain, and we jumped in the water and went down, and we followed 200. We had crowbars because we had to push these giant crowbars. They were like 4-foot crowbars because we had to push the rocks out of the way of the anchor and pry the anchor out of the rocks. And there were stories all about from the divers that were on there about how, oh yeah, we'll not be able to, we don't lose the crowbar because you'll never live it down. And I'm like, they're $20 crowbars, guys. They're not that expensive. No, you can't leave one. You just won't live it down. And I was like, okay. The boat captain that we were going to go do this with, his name is Keith, and if you go on the Munising charter, you'll meet him. Keith is one of my oldest friends in the dive business, and he is his main hobby in life is to pick on me, which is kind of fun. But so me and Kyle, who is my buddy, we went down, followed the chain around. It was real easy. It was buoyed, right? So we followed the chain around, and we followed back on itself and went all the way up. Did the tour on, and it was all in big giant sandstone type rocks. And here it was, the wedge anchor wedged right between two rocks. So we pried it out, moved it over, pried it out, jiggled it out, and got it out. So I was like excited about that. So I went and grabbed my lift bag and made it so that it wouldn't snag on anything else. I cooked my lift bag to it, my 100-pound lift bag, and it didn't budge. Filled my 100-pound lift bag, it didn't budge. So I filled my next 50-pound lift bag, and up it went. So that was cool, but it only went about 6 or 7 feet up because the chain was so heavy. So then I went and took my other 50-pound lift bag and clipped it on, because we brought a bunch of them down there, and let it up, and it filled up and it got to the surface. So I was really cool. I came up to the surface, and I got to the surface, and I said, this is the thing. You can pull up the rest of the chain. You can pull it up from the other side. And then I went, shit, I dropped the crowbar. And I said, I got to the boat, and Kyle handed up his crowbar. I was like, shit, I dropped my crowbar. Let's go down and find it. They're pulling in the anchor at this point. So there's no reference anymore. I'm not going to be able to find anything, but I think I could find it. So the visibility was pretty good. So Kyle and I dropped back down, and we did this little search pattern, and I couldn't find anything. But then I saw a chain mark where the chain had dragged through the sand. So I went in that direction. And then I saw a mark where my crowbar or the chain had hit the rock. And then I went and a mark where another chain had hit the rock or the anchor had hit the rock. And then I saw my crowbar. So another 20-minute dive, and I had found the crowbar. So I was pretty darn excited about that because I don't like not living things down. So that was on Friday that we got up there. And Saturday morning was our first charter. And what we do with this one is we camp. We have we cook and we camp. I make dinner for people. We do kind of a potluck thing, and I cook and on an outside grill. But we went and did a bunch of dives off of Munising. So what we do there is we go out again in just right near that lighthouse again. I'm gonna share your screen again, and we're gonna go share. And we go this lighthouse again, and the lighthouse is that's my dog in the background. If you can hear it, he's kind of scratching. But the lighthouse is still there. But in the shadow of this lighthouse is the wreck of the Wetmore, and the Smithmore. This Wetmore is in Tobermory. The Smithmore is a early steamship. It still had masts and sails because they didn't have the horsepower necessary to push everything through. The engine is buried right up to the top of it, and the whole wreck is buried up to about a foot of clearance. But all the woodwork and some of the cabin work and the boiler work above it is there. That's a pump that you're flying over. That's my daughter Natalie flying over or swimming over the pump in front of the boilers and the boiler room, which is right there. And We got to have selfies with all the people. We had two people wetsuit diving on this, and 2 or 3 wetsuit diving on this, which I always found amazing because it's something I wouldn't do in Lake Superior. Water temperature was in the high 40s on the bottom, high 50s, high 60s on the surface. But it's still, they were doing 20, 25-minute dives and not having a care in the world to dive in their wetsuits. So I thought that was pretty neat. That's Kyle. That was my dive buddy on the first dive. I try to take pictures of everybody because I want to have Facebook profile pictures all over the world that I took. Okay, that's Brandon. He and his wife do that trip every year. I think this was Rob Watson. Yep, that's Rob Watson. He's another rebreather diver with us. We had 4 rebreather divers, and the rest were all open circuit divers. No doubles on this one either. But he's exploring the wreckage around the Smithmore. Machinery on the deck as you go through. And then that's the top of the engine where they're moored in. The chain is right there. That's my wife and daughter, Natalie. My daughter, Natalie, in all her pink. That's pink Poseidon. You can get Poseidons in pink and white. Most people don't know that. But she loves her pink gloves and loves her pink everything. She wishes she had a pink suit. But hand-me-downs don't get to be chosen with the color that you get. The cool thing about the Smithmore is that the back railing is still intact. And so you can see how it was all made and put together. And it's really a fun dive. We are in about 60 to 70 feet of water right here. I was going over the railing here. The capstan's there. You can see the rudder post, the towing bit, and then that's the engine. The engine is, they did have right next to it. There's an old, there's a PVC suction thing because in the early days of diving, they used to suck all the silt out of this wreck so people could explore the engine in the engine room and see it. But there's no one doing that anymore. And after the Great Lakes Preserve Act was done, I think it's illegal to do it. So the dredge is still there. It got accidentally left on, and it got sucked down to where it couldn't be wedged out. So it's still there. Natalie is inside the boiler room structure there, and my daughter is pretty awesome as a diver. Both divers are pretty awesome. Both of them are pretty awesome. Natalie tends to be a little bit less timid than Olivia, and Natalie loves to go exploring inside ships. She's really competent. She's really good about what it is. She's taken the wreck diver course. She understands the whole thing. The one thing she doesn't understand, and I've had to explain to her, is she can go places I can't fit. So please make sure she turns around and wondering why I wasn't following her. It's because I couldn't fit into there. She didn't touch the sides going into there. She's so tiny. But she's going to make an awesome wreck diver and a wreck instructor someday. She's doing her dive master right now, and hopefully you guys get to listen to the stories of me teaching my kids dive master and instructor and rebreather in the next year or two. So, but really trying to get a framework of how small that was, and her bubbles started knocking sand out and silt, so I asked her to come out. Go up and do our safety stop. Everybody does that, and I looked over and there was one of the masts. But I like these photos. The deco ball is what I call it. Looks like a bait ball. Everybody hanging around at 15 feet waiting for a safety stop to be done. You can see the guy in wetsuit there, which is just crazy. Visibility was spectacular, though. The Wreck Express is the boat we use out of, and it's the Shipwreck Tours. It's a glass-bottom boat company that also does diving, and they're responsible for the Alger Underwater Preserve, trying to get some over-unders of people. One of the favorite wrecks in this entire area is the Bermuda, and the Bermuda is one of the glass-bottom boats' prime visits. So the Wreck Express goes around the glass-bottom boat tours schedule, so we're limited to about an hour on this wreck when we get there. It's in 32 feet of water. It is relatively intact canaler. A lot of the rigging is missing because it was brought over here into Murray Bay out of Grand Island to be salvaged. It was carrying specular hematite, and it was deemed not salvageable after they pulled all the rigging and stuff like that. They said, we're going to get everything we can off of it, but we're not going to worry about it anymore. But it's a neat first penetration dive if you've got really good buoyancy control, because it's really silty and it gets stirred up really easy. And when you put 12 or 15 divers on it, it can get stirred up pretty darn fast. We have really good divers that have really good buoyancy control, and they were told that I wanted to take pictures inside so that it wasn't stirred up right away. One of the cool things about this wreck is that the people that come out on the glass bottom boat tour like to see the visibility, so they toss coins in on the deck, and every once in a while you can go and find a quarter, or you can find something, and you're allowed to take those. Currency is not artifact, according to a couple of boat captains that I know. But that's Kate, and she and her husband dive this wreck every year. The Rebreather divers found it a little bit challenging to be so shallow, but it was still a good dive. And the iconic bow, you may have seen pictures of this. This is used in a lot of photography and a lot of the Facebook posts that you see out there where people steal this picture because a lot of people can take this same picture. And I try to get divers on it. And because it's one of those things. This is a nice little tight passage. I can fit through that one, but that's up in the bow. Natalie, I asked her to swim through it so I could get a picture. Again, these are not even really edited; they're just thrown together. And I take this picture with everybody. We had too many people go through and do it this time, but so it's a little bit stirred up. But if we've got a good weather and the silt's been blown off the wreck, this can be a really fun picture where you can see like you're looking through and coming out. There's a barrel on deck, an old stave barrel, and then the rudder is pretty spectacular. But that's the barrel again. But you see that's the front hole Natalie was right in, and lots of wreckage, nice rudder, and boat ladder. Oh, and we're back. This is again back on the Smithmore. So we'll stop share that one. Yeah, somehow those got out of order. But anyway, so that was Munising. Munising is a pretty awesome thing. I've got coming up in this podcast, we've got Isle Royal. Isle Royal went, and it was really good. We had a great group of people, and the visibility was spectacular. And we got to dive the Glenorchy, which is one of the ones I want to do a separate thing on because I've only done the Glenorchy once. I've been up there 27 times and only been done the Glenorchy once. And when we did the Glenorchy is bent over a reef, and no one's done the stern side here. Because it's over. What you have to do is you have to swim into the wreckage here, which is a lot more interesting with the anchors and everything like that. And then you have to follow up over the reef to get to the stern, which is a big, huge triple expansion steam engine, but laying on its side. Well, on the charter before ours, the dive shop canceled, and so the dive shop canceled. So the captain made it a family week, and he went and dove this wreck with friends and family, and he put 900 feet of anchor of cave line on it to be able to guide us up over, and so now I have video of stuff that most people don't ever get to see, which was really cool. And so I'll be sharing that with you. But I'm going to be trying to figure out a new format, make it a little bit easier for me to do this in small segments, make it a little bit more easier for me to do things that are more interesting to you. On the YouTube side of things, most of you guys are cutting off right around, like on a 30-minute podcast, you're cutting off right around 10 minutes. So I'm going to do it in 3 10-minute sections. And that way you can take it in little bits because I'm a lot to take. So until next time, I do appreciate you guys being here. And I really appreciate the 5 people that are watching this at any given time. So until next time, we'll see you.
DiverSync is a cooperation between Divers Incorporated and Divers Media Group. You can download archived past editions worldwide over the internet at DiverSync.com. If you wish to support DiverSync financially, you can find us on Patreon for bonus content, announcements of live performances, product giveaways, and other opportunities to be part of the program. Help us promote our netcast by telling your friends and dive buddies to subscribe to DiverSync on YouTube and Spotify. The opinions that you hear on DiverSync are not necessarily those of any station, website, network, or advertiser. These netcasts are not intended to substitute for professional diver training. Scuba diving does involve risk and should never be attempted without the proper instructions, supervision, and training. Have any questions or comments? We'd love to hear from you. We are on Facebook and Instagram for messages, or you can email us via our website at diversync.com.